What is going on, everyone? My name's Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today it's the Game Week 17 preview. So we're going to go through some of the topics and questions that you guys have brought up to me, and then talk about captaincy as well at the end. So we've got things like Man United defence, whether to sell De Bruyne for Spurs midfielders, the FPL Cup and stuff like that. Before we jump into it, I did want to say this video has kindly been sponsored once again by OneFootball. If you want to check it out, there's a link in the description below which will take you straight through to where you can download it. It's for iOS and Android devices, or you can just search for OneFootball in the stores. Loads of football news, team news, lineup news, live scores at the weekend and stuff like that. So like I always say, everything you need as an FPL manager is completely free, so give it a go and see what you think. So the first thing we have is the Palace defensive double up. Now, in general, I'm quite in favour of double-ups at times, especially if the fixtures are there, the team's there, kind of the price is right and that kind of thing. And that goes for both defence and attack. And before we talk about even Crystal Palace in general, I will say that having done double-ups in the past in defence, it can make it a bit nerve-wracking if you're watching the game. Obviously, if you're watching a game with a defender anyway, then any kind of shot that comes in and the clean sheet might go, that can be a bit frustrating. But when you've got two defenders, it's even worse. So bear that in mind from a kind of psychological point of view before you go for it. I think with Palace, most people are looking at probably the goalkeeper. Guaita has got up to 5.1 now. And Kelly, cheap defender, started at 4 million, but is now 4.3 as well. But obviously together, they're still relatively low priced for what you're going to get. And also with Kelly, 4.3 million, he's still pretty cheap. There's no real other 4 million playing defenders now. Obviously, he's gone up in price. Rico has. And we all know how much Lundstrom's gone up as well. So for him, you can still bench him in the tougher fixtures. You know, if you're not quite sure about a Palace clean sheet and you're playing with a one goalkeeper strategy, then you could just play Guaita and bench Kelly. And then other fixtures where they're better, you could just play both of them. So, and again, even if long-term he loses his place in the Palace team again, you can just bench him. You've got 4 other defenders and plenty of other players in your squad to play. Especially once Christmas is gone as well, you won't necessarily need that deep bench as much. So looking at how Palace have done recently, 3 clean sheets in the last 3. And to be fair, Kelly has not played week in, week out this year. But when he has, his clean sheet ratio is pretty damn good. So played 9 games where he started and got 6 clean sheets in those games. The last 6 game weeks, middle of the road for shots conceded in general, Crystal Palace, which is kind of what you'd expect from them. I don't think you should be expecting miracles from the kind of price they are, but Hodgson usually has them pretty well drilled and organised as a defensive unit. Looking at the fixtures, Brighton at home, Newcastle away, West Ham at home, so 2 nice home games there. Southampton away, Norwich away, so it gets a little bit tricky, and then they play Arsenal and Man City. So I'm not hugely confident of clean sheets over that little spell because of the amount of away games and top 6 sides. But then it's Southampton at home and Sheffield United at home. So from a goalkeeper point of view, really happy to have Guaita if I did own him for those fixtures. I think in the tougher ones, hopefully, you'd hope he'd get some save points as well. And Kelly for the really nice, juicy home fixtures, you could double up there. And like I said, just bench him in the tougher games. So I'm kind of all for it. I think the price is there. They're good as a defensive unit, and the fixtures are pretty good as well. So defensive double up, if you want to do it for Palace, absolutely go for it. The FPL Cup keeps coming up in my mentions on comments on YouTube and stuff. Happens every single year. You had Game Week 16 to qualify. It was like the top 4.2 million something or other accounts have qualified for the Cup. People keep asking me to talk about it. There's not really, I don't really know what to talk about. There isn't much to talk about with it. It's kind of all done automatically. You know, like my opponent, for example, has not made a transfer since Game Week 13, and they've not made any before that since Game Week 5. So there's no real incentive to change strategy. I'm not going to decide on my transfer in this week based on beating my opponent. It's just overall rank and mini leagues is probably more important to most people. So it's just not that engaging, I don't find, the Cup. So good luck to everyone in it. I mean, if I was close to winning it, maybe my attitude would change. But at this point, there's not really much to talk about. And personally, I'd rather have a good rank or beat my mini leagues than worry about one Cup opponent who may not even be playing the game at the moment. Is it time for Man United to winners? Now, someone genuinely asked this question. I didn't plant the question. I did kind of talk about it on stream recently. Now, I'm not going to try and push you into Man United defence. Not been good this year. But have we got the fixtures coming up to maybe turn that around? So Everton at home, Watford away, Newcastle at home. So again, a bit like Crystal Palace, 2 nice home games in the next 3. Now Everton's a bit of a tricky one because they kind of turned it on against Chelsea. Big Duncan Ferguson now in charge. Will that make it a tougher game for Man United? Potentially. And then it's Burnley away, Arsenal away, Norwich at home. So kind of 3 nice home fixtures in the next 6. I think because they're quite cheap, you can still bench them. They're not kind of Trent Alexander levels of Pricing or Robertson or whoever it might be. They're kind of down to the 5.3 million mark. So they are benchable in the tougher fixtures. Now, recently they have, because at the start of the season, their expected goals conceded and the amount of shots they were conceding was quite low. But now they're 9th worst team in the last 4 game weeks for shots conceded in the box. But they have played Spurs and Man City. Obviously, won both those games, only conceded 1 goal. But they probably did concede quite a few shots in them. Expected goals conceded 5.75 over the same time frame, and they conceded 7. So maybe a little bit unlucky for one of the goals, but overall probably as expected. Over the course of the season, though, like I said, still one of the best teams in terms of defensive stats. And they have got the fixtures there. And I think with Trent blanking, Liverpool's fixtures getting a bit tougher. Look, I'm not saying they'll keep up with Liverpool defenders. They don't necessarily have to because they're a bit cheaper. So I still like players like Aurier around that price, kind of the 5 million mark. But Man United defenders, maybe, absolutely nailed on. Players like Maguire, maybe a bit of goal threat. Perhaps he'll finally get his goal over Christmas. The fixtures are decent enough. I don't think it's the worst option, but I'm not absolutely gagging to bring one in, that's for sure. And then is Grealish a trap? And I hate the word trap, and I probably use it myself. So if I do on videos or on Twitter, you feel free to shout at me. But I think people use it when they're worried about making the wrong decision, or they basically want an excuse not to buy someone. And Grealish has come on the radar. If you look at 7.3 million midfielders or under, only 2 players have beaten him on points for the season. He's on 66, Tielemans is on 67, and Mount is on 69. But Grealish is only 6.1 million. 3 attacking returns in the last 4 game weeks, 1 assist, 2 goals. And you have to remember, they've played, Aston Villa that is, have played Newcastle, Man United, Chelsea and Leicester. So pretty tough games. So obviously, even when they lose, if Grealish gets attacking returns, happy days. I think the fixtures coming up are much nicer. Sheffield United away, and to be fair, that was a tough fixture. It probably still will be. I'm playing Lundstrom this week, but they have been conceding a few more goals recently. Southampton at home, Norwich at home, obviously really nice juicy fixtures there. Watford away, Burnley away, and both those teams not necessarily great for clean sheets either at the moment. So I think the good fixtures, he's a really good price, 6.1 million, a really good enabler. I don't buy into this trap rubbish, especially with Grealish. I think when you watch him play, he's one of the most attacking players in the team as well. He's creative, carries the ball forward, and has a few shots as well to go along with it. So 6.1 million. I don't think he's a trap, and potentially even a better option than Zaha going forward. So there's quite a few kind of buy, sell, hold questions this week, especially around players like Tomori. And obviously people have been looking for replacements for him, but obviously the question still needs to be asked, does he need to be sold straight away anyway? So hasn't played in the last 2 games and has picked up a knock as well, which is really frustrating because Rudiger is finally back. He's played for Chelsea in the Champions League, but we didn't get to see if all other centre-backs were fully fit, who would partner with him. So that's a bit annoying because Tomori had a knock, so we don't know if he's even going to be available this weekend. I think if you're not in a desperate need to get rid of him, i.e. you've got other defenders you can play, so I have him as well, but I've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, Lundstrom and Soyuncu, which I expect a lot of people have got, who've got really nice fixtures this week. I don't even need to play Tomori, so I can bench him. Obviously, going forward, especially with Gameweek 18 with a blank, I kind of want a nice bench to cover any Liverpool players that I want to keep. But if you're not in a desperate need to get rid of him this week, I would probably keep hold of him, especially if Lampard says he's going to be fit for the weekend. Then let's see who partners Rudiger. And if it's Tomori, if they get a clean sheet, maybe that would be good going forward. But if not, he probably is one to sell. And to be fair, going forward, we probably can't be truly confident anyway. So I do think he's a sell some point soon. I don't think he necessarily needs to be sold right this week. If you do want to say sell him this week, then a few options. We've kind of already talked about a lot of them. So Kelly, you could save a lot of money there. And have kind of a bench option and a good Palace option for when they've got nice home fixtures. I did think about Matt Target for Aston Villa, looked quite attacking on set pieces as well, but Mings is out for the rest of 2019 basically, so probably not going to go there. I think Aurier, Spurs fixtures are really good coming up, so he could be a nice option, very attacking as well. If any of the kind of fullbacks are going to attack for Spurs, left or right back, it's mostly going to come down the right with Aurier. And you could, if you wanted to stick to Chelsea as well, go for someone like Reece James. It looks like he was rested in the Champions League and has played a good few games in the Premier League now. So he could be a good one going forward. Very attacking minded too, like Aurier. Obviously, there's slight question marks over whether he's going to play 90 minutes week in, week out. But right now, he does look like the first choice right back. And Azpilicueta can fill in at left back if Lampard doesn't want to play Emerson or Alonso. So there's a few options there for you. De Bruyne to Son, ALLI. I think this question is going to basically come up every single week until the majority of people have got rid of De Bruyne. So I own him. I own Kevin De Bruyne. 2 goals in the last 4 game weeks. Has been a pretty nice return. Fixtures coming up are a bit tougher now. So Arsenal away, whether that's tough or not, I suppose, is debatable. I think, if West Ham had a better attack, they would have scored plenty more against Arsenal because they were really poor for a lot of that game, and I don't think they're going to be able to turn it on against Man City. So I expect Man City to do well in that. Leicester at home, that could be quite a tight fixture now. We know how good Leicester are doing. Obviously, there's that fight for second place as well. And then Wolves away is not a game that I would ever consider too many points to be scored in from an attacking point of view. So if you look at Spurs fixtures, they've still got that Wolves away fixture this week, so that's quite tough. I'm probably going to keep De Bruyne for the Arsenal game versus bringing in a Spurs player against Wolves. But then they got Chelsea at home and Brighton at home, and that Chelsea game could be really open. So I am looking to make the swap, but probably next week. I think one thing to say is De Bruyne looks quite good, but Man City don't. There's just something not quite right there. If Aguero comes back, that could be different. De Bruyne is creating a lot of chances. Perhaps they're not just being put away by the players that are there. If you look at the stats-wise, De Bruyne 17 chances created in the last 4, which is huge. Son 11, so not too far behind, and ALLI 7. And then shots in the box. De Bruyne's only had 5, but to be fair, ALLI and Son have only had 7 as well over the last 4 game weeks. So he's not actually that far behind. If you watch him play, he is getting in and around the box, taking a good few shots here or there. So I think he looks good. I think there's no harm in holding this week. And maybe even next week, but I think Spurs midfielders are just a little bit cheaper, especially when it comes to ALLI. Son's getting to the same price as De Bruyne now, so it's going to be pretty close, but ALLI can get a bit cheaper. Nice fixtures, obviously. Spurs looking really good right now, and Man City maybe not, but you know what you're going to get with Man City. At some point they're going to turn it on and absolutely smash some teams, and De Bruyne will be a key part of that. So it's a tricky one, but I think hold this week and reassess for next week. Another sell or keep, Pulisic. So again, another player that I own, 4 blanks in a row. Now, he has shown a lot of promise, but just not delivered yet, so he's been super frustrating. Again, if you look over the last 4 games when he's blanked, he's 8th for expected goals open play. So he's been doing pretty decent. He's having a good few shots, getting into some good positions, just not quite converting. 12 shots in total, 10 inside the box, which is the same as Rashford, who everyone's trying to look to bring in right now, and 3 behind Jimenez, and I think it's 6 behind Vardy as well for shots in the box. So not doing too bad for a player that's blanked. Obviously, getting blanks does not get us FPL points. Good underlying stats do not get us FPL points, at least for the weeks that have gone, but hopefully it shows going forward he will get some. I think Bournemouth at home, my question would be, do you have the luxury where Pulisic, where he's probably going to play, I think, against Bournemouth at home, to take him out? Now, Bournemouth could be without Ake, Cook and Smith, so they're looking pretty kind of threadbare in defence. So again, a bit like De Bruyne, I'm going to keep Pulisic this week. I just think Bournemouth at home, Chelsea are doing so well in terms of attacking wise, kind of getting shots in. And I think Bournemouth just looking poor in defence and poor in general, to be honest, recently. I don't know what's happened there. But I think you have to keep him there. If you want to replace him, then we've got the likes of Grealish. We talked about ALLI, Son, obvious replacements. And maybe even Martial if you want a cheaper route into the Man United attack. Although Rashford does look like the one at the moment to own. But Martial is quite significantly cheaper and obviously would only be 1 move from Pulisic as well. But definite hold for me. And then the same thing for Zaha, keep or hold. So he's been pretty frustrating. Obviously, he got those goals against Liverpool and Burnley. Suddenly we're thinking he's got good fixtures, he's in a bit of form, is it time to bring him in? And to be fair, I didn't think it was too much of a risk at his price to bring him in. But he's blanked against Bournemouth at home, Watford away. That's almost unforgivable, I think. Obviously, that Bournemouth game was a bit weird because Crystal Palace did go down to 10 men. But over those 2 games, regardless of the 10 men, he still played the Watford game. 2 chances created, 1 shot, which was in the box. Expected assists 0.09, expected goals 0.04. That is awful threat from a player we're expecting to score big for us. So I think in general, it's not just him, but Palace in general don't look good going forward. I think if you want Palace options, it's probably in defence. He has the fixtures, so he's always going to have that problem where you're not going to want to drop him. Again, maybe I would give him the Brighton game and see if he can show some fight. I think you've got to set expectations with players at this price. They're not always going to deliver the points you want, but you need something from him soon. So I wouldn't be against selling him this week in general, but I think if you've just got him for 1 or 2 game weeks ago, maybe give him a little bit more of a chance and then move him on. Again, Grealish could be another option for you. I only want to touch on captaincy quickly because it feels like over the last few weeks we're only really focusing on a couple of players or a couple of teams. It's the same this week as well. So discounting Arsenal versus Man City, I just think could be a tough game for Arsenal. You're only really looking at Aubameyang there anyway, I think, at the moment. And Man City, look, De Bruyne and Sterling could do well, but I just think they've let us down enough recently, and there's just too good fixtures elsewhere. Liverpool versus Watford, Leicester versus Norwich, to even consider Man City this week. Man United versus Everton, I kind of already mentioned the fact that Man United have been looking good, Rashford especially, but against Everton, we've just seen them do pretty well against Chelsea, and Duncan Ferguson's there now. Will he kind of have them up for this game, more defensively sound, whatever it might be? I just don't think Man United captaincy this week is worth going for. So looking at the 4 I've picked, Liverpool versus Watford, last 3 games, I think Liverpool has scored something like 15 or 16 goals at home versus Watford. So it's a nice fixture for them. Whether you need to really worry about previous results, I mean, I personally don't take too much account of it, because obviously teams change, managers change and all that stuff. But they've got a pretty good record there. And obviously Salah, I think recently, I don't know if it was last season or the one before, got like 5 attacking returns in a single game week, which was insane. And speaking of Salah, I do think he's looked better recently. Got his goal and assist against Bournemouth, looked decent in the Champions League as well, had plenty of shots. So maybe getting back to his best. I said he was a good captaincy option this week, and I think he is again this week. And obviously, if you've got Mane, then he's a fantastic option versus Watford too. So I think outside of the Leicester fixture, this is definitely the best one. And I think there's probably a little bit of ground to be made up. Everyone's going to captain Vardy again. So if you wanted to take a little bit of a risk and make up some ground, you could go for those Liverpool players. Really nice fixture, plenty of points opportunities. And maybe if Vardy has an off day, somehow Norwich keep a clean sheet or at least keep the amount of goals down, you could gain some rank with Liverpool players. But obviously, if Vardy smashes it again, which is absolutely something he can do, then that could hurt. I don't really know what more to say about Vardy. 11 goals since game week 9. Scored 2 versus Villa. It could have absolutely been more. If you watch that game, him and other Leicester players should have had more points. Norwich, still 7th worst for shots conceded in the box, even though Zimmerman's been back the last 4 game weeks. So still not doing fantastically well in defence. And if they're going to try and play out from the back and kind of, take it to Leicester, then Leicester are going to fancy that, especially on the counter with Vardy, Maddison, Tielemans playing through balls and stuff like that. So Vardy just looks like the best option again. I think he's just been so consistent. Every reason to think that he could break that amount of goals scored in a row record that he set himself. So I think for me, I'm going Vardy right now, but then a part of me, we might get early team news because Liverpool are the early fixture this week. I might change it to Mane, but we'll see. And Chelsea versus Bournemouth, they always seem to come up as good options every week, but they're kind of put them down as the punt category, mainly because Liverpool and Leicester have been looking so good. But Pulisic came off for 61 minutes in the Champions League. Probably not going to captain him, given that he's had 4 blanks. But again, the underlying stats are pretty good for him. And Abraham came off on 70 minutes, so he's definitely going to start. So I like Abraham as an option for captaincy this week. If you really wanted to, I think Liverpool are maybe a slight punt outside of Vardy. I think Abraham's an even further punt, but could provide pretty decent rewards. And Chelsea's second most goal attempts in the box over the last 4 game weeks, only behind Leicester, so doing really well in an attacking sense. And Wolves versus Spurs, I just think Wolves are going to be too tight. That game might not be as open as Spurs might want. And Wolves can defend. They don't often get smashed. Look, maybe they'll lose that game, but it'll probably be like a 2-1 or a 2-0 or something like that. So some Mane decent options, but Vardy probably has to be number 1. Mane and Salah not far behind, and possibly Chelsea as an outside punt. So that's it for this video. Thanks very much, as always, for watching. If you did enjoy it, make sure to give it a like. Much appreciated. As always, subscribe if you're new around here. Hit that notification bell so you know when all the other videos are going to go up. There'll be a live stream Thursday at 9 o'clock as always. If you can't tune in for that, obviously good luck in Game Week 17. And I'll see you again for Game Week 18 next week. Leave a comment below if you've got anything to say about what I've said, any questions, stuff like that. And as I said at the start of the video, if you've not already checked out OneFootball, click the link in the description below or search OneFootball on the iOS Android store. It's a great little app, be really handy as an FPL manager. So give it a go, it's completely free. See what you think. Otherwise, like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and I will catch you next time. Cheers all.